Hi, welcome to your capstone, and we are finishing off the HACCP program. So, we've made it all the way to Form 8, and Form 8 is a summary document of what you have identified, in particular relative to your CCPs. As an inspector, I used to always jump first and foremost to the final form in a HACCP program because it provides a summary of what are the most important items to be observing. So you may have identified operational prerequisite controls, as we call them, OPRPs, which are essential for the management of the food safety of your product. All prerequisite programs are important, but as you did your hazard analysis in Form 5A and Form 5B, you may have noted that you didn't cover certain prerequisite programs in your HACCP plan. Those ones are the generic prerequisite programs. And then you have identified prerequisite programs that are essential to the food safety of your program. And those are your operational prerequisite programs, OPRPs, as we call them. And then you may or may not have identified CCPs in your product. Again, the ideal scenario would be for everything to be a GMP or a prerequisite program. That would be fantastic. If that is the scenario for your product, do make sure to put in something. Make sure to let me know. Do not leave this form blank. Never leave a form blank. Always type something such as not applicable. Again, a blank form to an auditor or to an inspector implies that you forgot to do it, not that you didn't think it through and provide an appropriate analysis. Not applicable, no CCPs identified. This clearly states to an inspector or auditor that you thought it through. There was no CCPs identified, and in all fairness, many products do not have CCPs, and that is the ideal scenario. But in the case of our muffins, we did identify that baking was, I can't remember what step it was. Let's say it was step 8. Step 8, not step 9. And as you recall, we had identified as CCP 1B. So, presence of pathogenic. I could be, and I would be well advised to go back and cut and paste this from my Form 5B. Presence of pathogenic bacteria from inappropriate application of time, temperature. At this point, this is where it gets fun. We have to identify what are the critical limits for this product and how much time, how much temperature. Oh, go back to the fall when we did that process validation workshop back in preserving and curing. You need to identify or specifically describe how much time and temperature is necessary to maintain and control the CCP. Now, again, this is a thought exercise. Your HACCP program is a thought exercise at this point. In the real world, this is where you would be going and either researching government documents to identify what would be a relevant temperature for internal temperature, or you may be having to do computer modeling and identify your D and Z and T reference values for this class of product and identify an appropriate time temperature combination. All sorts of different possible variables, but you need to identify cook to internal temperature of whatever's relevant. So maybe in our case it's 86 Celsius for 2 minutes. Something, in the case of your HACCP program, I'm just looking for common sense. What would be something realistic? Again, In the real world, you would be going and doing research to ensure that you have properly evaluated your critical limits, properly identified relevant validation evidence to support your documentation here. This is the sort of thing that an inspector or an auditor can come back and say, hey, where did you come up with this 86 degrees for 2 minutes? And you would need to be able to provide justification for it. Again, in this exercise, I don't expect that because this is something that we covered in a previous class. Okay, from here, we need to identify what would be monitoring procedures. As you recall, monitoring is your first line of observation to make sure that this process is in control. So we have listed here what is essential, and in point form, you can identify. So let's just make the text a little bit bigger here. Who is responsible for the task? So who? Baking line operator. Now, when we say who, typically you're going to put in the human resources title, not who, Amy, or who, Sunan. You're putting in the title of that person because, again, people change in companies. What procedure is to be followed? You can do this in point form. What procedure? Measuring temperature using calibrated thermometer on product every 30. Oh, I may be jumping ahead here. So what procedure? What observation is made? What measurement is taken? We may be summarizing this in here already. So measuring temperature using calibrated thermometer on 2 items of product every 30 minutes off the line at the end of the tunnel oven. Something to that effect. Again, use some common sense. Project how you may be actually making this product in industry, but use the framework of our kitchen as your background. Now, deviations. So let's say, for example, if my product was not, if it was below the acceptable temperature. So if monitoring, so temperature is below 86 Celsius at end of tunnel. We'd have to think through what would be our appropriate corrective action. So who is going to do this? In form line supervisor. We would have to possibly hold any product that has come off the line previously. This is why more and more companies are going to real-time temperature detection on products, so that instead of doing this, they are monitoring the temperature consistently using infrared or laser scattering thermometers, but hold product from up to previous temp check. What procedures would be followed? Well, in the case, let's say, for example, our muffins are going through a tunnel oven. We maybe need to slow oven down or check temperature. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have a part 2 of this video. See you again in just a couple moments.